I'm Matthew Barr from Glasgow University, usually just known as Matt. Dave. That's right. I was going to say I totally agree with what Dave was just saying, because I'm kind of in the same space, but coming from a different angle. Is this going to advance? Yeah, okay, so what Dave was talking about was a little bit about the edutainment stuff. I've recently started a part-time PhD. I am working full-time, which is why the PhD is kind of a wee bit behind. But I agree with Dave that the sort of edutainment approach isn't where we're at, and I actually want to follow up with Dave after this about a few things as well. What I'm looking at, I'm more interested in this kind of accidental learning that can happen from commercial games. Now, this is the kind of woolly systemic stuff to some extent, but I'm quite interested in finding out the basis of that and trying to get a bit more evidence as well, so there's some similarities there. I like the idea, and I think that what Dave said about the idea that this is kind of an idea that we like, there's no evidence for it, is absolutely true. So what I started to do to start up the PhD was I ran a couple of focus groups to talk to our students at Glasgow about things that they thought they'd learned from games. And they identified some ways that they learn about the games themselves, so techniques they use to learn about the games, so talking to each other, reading wikis, stuff like that. Then I got a little project off the ground with a small scholarship to talk to people who make the gaming wikis, so like the Dark Souls wiki, the Dwarf Fortress wiki, those really like hardcore wikis that are really essential to playing the game. And we were able to show, kind of, I think, that the best gaming wikis are kind of almost academic. Like they're quite good. There's multiple routes to the information, like there is in a sort of proper academic resource. Dwarf Fortress, I mentioned this Dwarf Fortress at Cambridge a few weeks ago, and they were like, they thought I was making it up. But yeah, so like, for example, Dwarf Fortress has this really great, the wiki for it has a really great quality assurance, like a discussion, almost like a peer review system built into it, which for me is like much better than I see in a lot of academic projects. Obviously these ideas aren't new. I really like this quote from John Seeley Brown, who is an academic, but he was the chief scientist at Xerox for 10 years. He's on the board at Amazon, he's a businessman as well. So, and he would rather hire someone who's better at Warcraft than with an MBA from Harvard. And that got me thinking that maybe what I'm interested in is these other sort of more elusive kind of attributes, but our university, what Cali calls as well, they call it graduate attributes. It's kind of a bullshit term, but it's it's in vogue at the moment, so I'm following my research that because they get money. But that's the idea. It's these kind of like it's not knowing about a subject. It's knowing how to do stuff. It's sort of skills and sort of competencies. So the quotes you'll see in the next few slides relate to our 10 graduate attributes. The first of which is investigative. I should say very quickly, these quotes just came out of those focus groups and out of that wiki research. I wasn't looking for them, I just found them afterwards. So it's this kind of idea, and Dave has touched on this and coming back there about the tangential learning was also sort of relevant here. People go off and they find out about the stuff in the games, but they're also, you could argue that they're subject specialists about their favourite games. It doesn't matter that it's not academic, they're still experts about games. And they're learning about them and they're able to talk about them with some eloquence, like I saw on the wiki project. There we go. I think we can argue that gamers are also independent and critical thinkers. Again, this is another one of our graduate attributes. Bullshit. And what the guys said in the focus groups was they really wanted to talk about, you know, that first job interview you get after uni, you say, well, talk about your problem solving skills or a time you dealt with a difficult problem. And so you have very little to draw on. You can't refer to that job you had at Tesco, you know, because you're not allowed to put it in your CV. And I think that they would quite like to talk about what they did in games and having them taken more seriously. This is reaching slightly. I think that gamers can be resourceful and responsible. The guys that put together the Dark Souls wiki, I talked to them all and they were incredibly responsible, almost to the point of being a little bit scary. They really want their wiki to be the best wiki out there. Obviously anyone who's played a multiplayer game can be described as an effective communicator if they're going to succeed. Whether it's like being part of a raid in World of Warcraft or just dicking around in a Call of Duty multiplayer, you have to communicate. And as a result of that, as a result of all this communication, I think that happens particularly in multiplayer games, whether it's online or just shouting at your little brother in the living room, you can essentially become an experienced collaborator, and that was something that focus group people felt really strongly about. They said, well, people look at team sports, like universities have team sports on the go as if it's good for building our character. People look at games and don't realise that a lot of the same stuff is going on, and often it's more complicated. Games can also build confidence, whether it's because you're hiding behind a sort of avatar, you don't have to give away too much about yourself, but also because you get experience of things like leading a team. Where do you get that experience really in many walks of life until you get to a certain point in a certain job? When do you lead a team? Adaptable, this is the worst one I've got, I think. I think gamers are adaptable, but I haven't really got a good example of this. This was just an example of one of the guys on the Dark Souls wiki and how he adapted to deal with some problem people in the wiki, people vandalizing it and stuff, which I thought was sort of vaguely adaptable. Please move on. And as we all know, games are kind of getting better, although obviously there's some examples of the opposite, of sort of raising ethical and socially aware or social issues. So like Mass Effect obviously raised sort of racism and stuff like that. But actually, even the games, if you're at all reflective, even the games that are, you know, like Saints Row or something like that, they're still probably getting a debate going. People are thinking about stuff, and that's the final one of our graduate attributes, reflective learners. I think the people who are playing a game are learning about a game. That's part of the fun. And when they go off and talk to their friends or write on Facebook about their game, they're reflecting on what they've learned. So I think there's we can argue that one as well in terms of graduate attributes. And yes, what I want to do next, I want to do some interviews and some focus groups around those. Thanks. Around those, around the actual graduate attributes, because and sort of, cause I think I can probably get better examples than what I've got here. I've actually asked the specific questions. I have asked for funding to get some PlayStations to run a course, but that's probably not going to happen. Yeah. So if any of this sounds like bollocks and you think, just stop your PhD now and get in touch, or you have some ideas about how maybe an avenue I should be pursuing, then get in touch, just drop me an email or tweet me. Thanks.
Good luck. Any questions from us?
How long do you think it'll be, like years before you can walk in an interview and actually say those things?
I thought you were going to say how long before I graduate. Not really. As I said to my students in this focus group, I said, fine, if I'm on your interview panel, you know, you could do it tomorrow, but I don't know how far away we are.
A great experiment. I got applied for a job and do that. It's like in the banking sector. It's like, well, I had these great experiences in World of Warcraft.
Tell you what, you go to a job interview and say that and let me know and I'll write a paper about it. You won't get a job, but I'll get a nice paper out of it.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Any other questions, guys? Oh, there's one. What are you looking to do with the research, or in terms of if you come out with these findings, what are you hoping that it brings forward?
First of all, a job. That would be quite nice. But aside from that, I think that our university is particularly shit, and this is being filmed, isn't it? Our university is a little bit backward looking and doesn't oh god. And it doesn't look to these sort of new ways of maybe developing things. If I could show it even in a small way that the games should at least be considered something you should put on your CV, or at least was equal to team sports, I think that would be a real achievement for all the sort of gamers that we have out there, and I think universities should take it a bit more seriously.
Do you think that some of those categories are a bit aspirational, or sort of shown in the best light? I'm thinking sort of League of Legends, for example, when you talk about team players and people working together.
I think rather than aspirational, the term I used was bullshit, but I totally agree. I think there's quite a lot of that. It's a little bit, some of those I really need to try and pin down, and it may be that not all of them can actually fit into this. And maybe I shouldn't be using Glasgow's graduate attributes, for example. Cali's are different. I think they have 5 or 6 that are slightly different. It's a lot of that same crap. It's the sort of teamwork and stuff, but it's obviously happening. Like one of the quotes was up there that was like, if you're in a World of Warcraft guild, having vent on your machine was essential. You wouldn't be allowed in the guild, like any serious guild without it, because you have to communicate. You really are working as a team, and you've got. I was talking to these 19-year-old girls. I did an all-girl focus group for reasons of my own annoying. Damn you, Brian! I want this team.
We'll tweet your wife the link.
It's not on Twitter. I'll be. What was I saying? About my inappropriate relationship with female students. And they were talking about. They had really good examples of dealing with people who were older than them from different places, different countries across Europe, being able to sort of get the message across and wrangle them into a meaningful team, and raid some big fucking tank. That's much better than playing fucking hockey on a rainy day.
Okay. Well, are you talking about like serious games? People are like really into it, or just like casual games? Like casual games, they have the same attitudes. They say the same thing. People that play Candy Crush.
It's everyone in the world.
Yeah, well, everyone in the world is going to be super smart and have all these graduate attributes then. I think that's a little bit more of a push. I saw actually the Gates Foundation seems to be interested in this. They tweeted something about this yesterday about, oh, well, what about I think the examples they had were words with friends and was Candy Crush one of them? They said, oh, are these making people smarter? And I don't know. I think that's you could maybe argue words with friends is improving vocabulary, but Candy Crush, I don't know.
Kills your soul.
Pardon?
Kills your soul.
And it kills your soul. So swings and roundabouts, really.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Matt.